You see this? This is from Yale. Now, I worked with this guy, Derek Briggs, showed him all my stuff for years, and then in 2015 I wrote a book describing all this. And in 2016 they acknowledged that it's exactly what I said. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures, it's just mean creatures, promoted by silica-rich oceans. Why are they silica-rich? Why is so much silica? It says the Ediacara Biota is the earliest fossilized ecosystem. Complex, macrocellular, multicellular organisms, creatures' bodies, creatures' bones, all transitions due to nucleophilic substitution. They didn't understand that. It's worldwide, one layer, worldwide. How the fossils are preserved remains controversial. However, they are exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures. Now, it consists of exceptionally preserved soft-bodied forms. Now, it was due to rapid precipitation of silica cements. Well, why would it precipitate silica cements? How did that happen? They have no way to account for that. And it says these silica cements just appeared, high silica saturation of the oceans, the whole world, prior to the appearance of these silica biomineralizers. What's a biomineralizer? It means biology that got mineralized by silica. Now let me just show you something right now. That's a heart. You see that? That's the aorta. And this is another spot of blood in the heart. That is the ventricle wall where it runs down. And this is where the plumbing is at the top of the heart. That's a heart. And this is what they call water opal, or they call it water glass. Same thing. And they're going to talk, well, as a matter of fact, I was doing some research on silica gel, and that's all they do is they take this stuff and grind it up. These water opals. All right, if this was flushed with blood, it would just be an opal. It would be a completely opalized, bloody-looking heart with all of the different colors in the right places to attach to the right things. I've shown that many times, the heart. I suppose I should show it again. But this is the kind of preservation. All my stuff is. All of it. I mean, I know I've shown Caesar a million times, but here's my friend Caesar Augustus. He's a goose. And there's his feathers. That's a feather pattern in the back right there. So, which is also collagen, and he's also flat on one side because he died like that. And if you know how to look at the patterns in the right shades and so forth, you can see the neck and everything. You know, it just snapped right off when it got picked up. Now, this is what's going on. This is the stuff. And I have so much of it, it's just over the top incredible. And they're gigantic too, which is, this is the hair follicle. This turns everybody on. All right, I think I got a picture of this somewhere. Yep, there it is. All right, that's it right there. That's a hair follicle, just like you knew. That's the muscle. Makes it stand up on end. Erector. Oh, my hand, my fin, you know, they stand up on end. This is the sebaceous gland. Squirts a little oil on there so she can zip out of there. And that's the hair shaft. Vein and artery. It is what it is now, and this is big, very big compared to yours, obviously. You know, I don't have to tell you that. Now, so the things I'm presenting here are quite obviously real. And the silicon, well, let me show you something. I have a lung around. Well, I did show you the hearts, but I do have a lung around here that makes, okay, here's one right here. Silicon filled in all the cavities, basically. The fleshy parts stabilize more or less using transition metals, which are the little metals that stabilize. Now, holes and cavities and veins and like this is the plumbing of of a lung, just like this one here. This is another lung, just exactly the same one. This one here is totally devoid of everything. This one kept everything nice and perfect. All right, and this is all where the plumbing would be on this one, and this is the plumbing where it was on this. So this one filled in with silicates. This one just was in a different kind of chemistry, and everything washed out. And I have so many different lungs. I got them coming out of my ears. Lungs and hearts are very, very well preserved, and fingertips and toes, because they're so saturated with blood. I mean, they're just absolutely saturated with blood. Your fingers and your toes are the terminals, the terminus, where the vein and the artery finally end up, and they have to combine there. And there's a ton of blood in those two spots, in the tips of your toes and the tips of your fingers. All over your hand. I mean, look at the blood everywhere. It's just saturated with blood. And it all comes down to the end. Right, so I have made the statement that Yale has come to the same conclusion I have about the Great Flood, and it could very well be from the biblical accounts. Now, I say I can account for biology and all of these enzymes and how this elegant chemistry is created, and the way it's done is by biology. You have to understand right from the beginning, which I showed you the molecules, which are the little tiny particles, and they form charged particles, as I showed you before, I hope. Here, some of these are missing, some of there's too many. Those are your isotopes. All right, so we know about charged particles, we know about isotopes, we know that the periodic chart just has to be completely rearranged. We know that these are the neutrinos. There's a black one and a white one, just exactly what I showed you. They call them Dirac neutrinos. This is from Fermilab. This is not my work. And the Majorana is where they see it, and it's sort of in a variation of, they can't tell what it is, but they just saw it sort of mixed together. I can see them mixed together, and I can see them black and white. Same thing. Not a big hard thing to see. Now, so let's get back to life. I showed you the giant creatures were on the face of the earth. That's the mussel, and that is the sebaceous gland. There's the stalk, and there's the root, and there's the vein and artery. So we know we're dealing with things that nobody could possibly anticipate, and nobody at the current time is willing to step forward and dig into. So how did all of these things get protected like this? Well, what happened was, it's called nucleophilic substitution and invasion, and it happens in aqueous wet solutions using transition metals, which are all these colors, and they find somebody to partner up with, and they create that bond, and eventually it stabilizes. And this is nothing more than silicates with inclusions. And what inclusions? Well, that might be copper. This is obviously iron, ferrous oxides. Some of the other colors, whatever they are, they're different transition metals. And the transition metals have oxidation states, and oxidation states mean that they have an affinity to bond with something that wants that oxidation state. And this particular layer wants whatever this color is, and I'm not sure what it was. Okay, my friends, it's starting to come around finally. Yale has agreed with my research that there was a great worldwide flood that created mud fossils, which are perfectly preserved, well, they call it exceptionally preserved soft-bodied creatures, by one worldwide heavy saltwater, silica-rich flood. Where do silicates come from? This is what I'm going to be talking about. But this is from the New Scientist, just out within a day or two ago. Earth Review. BBC tells terrifying story of our planet's great dying. This is going to be a TV series. Kicks off with Inferno, the story of our planet's biggest mass extinction. Now, I would say that the mud fossils rate as absolutely the biggest mass extinction, and I believe it was from precisely what Velikovsky reported, and it was not 252 million years ago. The flood that I am talking about, which is the Great Dying, was approximately 3,500 years ago, very, very recent. All my mud fossils, which have been DNA tested and CAT scanned and chemistry and anatomy and the whole 9 yards is done, almost 99% of them were on top of the dirt. They weren't even buried. I just picked them up. Like this lung right here. That's a human lung. You see how flat it is on the back? They all died flat because of a giant flood. And I understand now the anatomy and the chemistry and what feldspar is made of and how the blood transfers, and even the new interstitium, they call it now, which is a newfound organ. Just look it up, interstitium. And it's the layer of this fabric that coats every organ and everything, and it's basically membranes. It's a system-wide membrane. They call it a new organ, and it's the biggest organ in the body. And they didn't even know it was here until a couple of years ago. I saw all this stuff in my mud fossils many years ago, and I also have new species, which I call the no-toes. The toes are built right into them, and we have a lot of these. That's where the tibia comes down, the big bone, and then the fibula sits on the side, and that's the two of them. This one just glues together with a couple of ligaments, and it's got all the same architecture as a human foot. You know, well, except for there's no bones, there's springs inside. And we have these in a whole variety of degradation, so I can show you this very, very clearly. It's almost like a anatomical CAT scan. They've decayed. Well, you can see all the springs and everything. So anyway, this is what they're talking about, and I have a totally different take on this. Like I say, my stuff is only 3,500 years ago, as far as I'm concerned, and bones and everything transitioned, and they transitioned because of exactly what Velikovsky said. The Venus almost hit Earth. It was an extremely hot saltwater flood, which literally caused a chemical reaction. I'm sure he didn't know about this, because I have associated to all my mud fossils being formed inside of fascia. And what is fascia? Fascia is collagen. What is collagen? It's a membrane. What is a membrane? It's made out of phospholipids. Now, what does phospholipids mean? Phospho is phosphorus. Lipids means fats. So they're fatty lipids. In this hot, salty waters, I'm going to show you what happens to silicon. You think silicon is just silicon? You think phosphorus is just phosphorus? Aluminum is just aluminum? No. Not by a long shot. Silicon, well, let's just see what really silicon is made of. You think it's just one thing? Oh, yeah, that's a piece of silicon. No question. There's one piece of silicon. No, absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you right now, this entire chart has to change. It's completely wrong. You know, there's zones of stability, yes. But let me show you, well, phosphorus, silicon, I can't forget what I was just looking at one or the other, but let's just look at the isotopes. It's not just one big lump that's here that clicks over to there and they attach. No, there's a bazillion particles in between. They know this. They just disregard it. They're called isotopes. Okay, I'm going to get back to this, I'm sure, in a minute. But what this is all about was the preservation of these exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures. It was from silica-rich oceans. The preservation was due to a rapid precipitation, which is a flood, of silica cements. Where did they come from? Silica cements. Why would they cement these things into perfectly preserved body parts? They have no idea where they came from. By the high silica saturation state of the oceans. That's what preserved these. And I know where the silicates came from, and they were from the fascia, which is this coating, which is feldspar. and I'm going to explain it to you in great detail in the chemistry. But first of all, let's just look at, well, right here it is, isotopes. I say everything was formed, well, not everything, but silicon, well, all feldspar is aluminum silicates, which means it's aluminum attached to silicon. And here is silicon. Well, what is all this? The hell is all this stuff? I thought silicon was a silicon. Well, it is. 3 different states of silicon here. All right, 28, 29, and 30. These are different sizes. But it's silicon. Way down here it's silicon. Way up here it's silicon. What the hell's going on? I thought silicon was silicon. No, it isn't. It can be still silicon, but it's bigger and smaller by varying degrees of electron dipole density. All right, everything here is dipole electrons. So when they take a silicon, all right, that is right here stable, 29. Okay, that's the number of particles basically that they say is in here now, and it's stable. Let's just think about it that way. It's a nuclide size. All right, what's a nuclide? Well, they don't even describe it. All right, anyway, it's just a bigger mass. You see it 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is the neutrons, and these are the charge on it. So they give it the same charge no matter how big it is. It's really insane what they're doing. So here's what the real story is. This right here would be a stable silicon. All right, and here it shakes, nothing goes flying off. It bounces into other stuff, they don't stick. That's stable. All right, and they want to be stable. And virtually all of them will eventually get to stability as they decay and get bigger and smaller. But I could take a couple of these out. That's a dipole electron. I could take that away and then it drops down one. I take a couple of them away, it drops down some more. Then it drops down some more. If I put extra ones in here, it just gets bigger. That's all. It still falls into the range of what they would call silicon. But there's no solid one big silicon. And there's no one big oxygen, and there's no one big nitrogen, there's no one big anything. They all have these isotopes. All right, silicon has 23 known isotopes, and that's known ones. I'm going to tell you right now, is thousands of unknown ones, because enzymes are catalysts that they flip these little particles like instantaneously. They would never even see the half-life of them because it's so instantaneous how elegant these enzymes are, and that's what accounts for life. You could never, ever, ever have life from what we see on this chart right here. There's just no way it could combine and to make all this fancy stuff we see in life. And now they're just starting to see how fancy life is. So anyway, these are the list of isotopes, and they say some of the most abundant isotope is 92%, and it goes on to stability, longest living isotopes. Anyway, my point being is the whole periodic chart has to change. In other words, hydrogen is not one proton and one electron. It's approximately, I'm going to go with 1835 or so, 1835 particles like this in a ball. And then one more that wants to get in, and it says, we're all set. We got enough white particles in here. You stay out. Because there's going to be white and black particles attached together. And those are, they call them gluons. They're really what the electron always was. They never knew the dark part was attached to the electron. And 2 electrons together, back to back, make a photon. Shown it thousands of times. And, of course, again, okay, Yale says they don't know how the soft-bodied tissues were preserved. Well, I do. And these are these bilipid layers, phosphorus, bilipid layers. Well, where is phosphorus? It's right there. And where is aluminum silicates? Right here. And I showed you all the isotopes, I think, or will, and it's just more than they're just breaking down and mixing back into the aluminum silicates. There's nothing here that's a solid piece of anything. There's zones of stability, yes, I agree with that. But then there's all kinds of everywhere else. And when you put them in a hot acid or salty solution, a lot of transition metals, all kinds of chemistry going on, and enzymes and everything else coming out of all these bodies of these creatures, you're going to end up breaking things down, and you're going to end up with silicon or aluminum silicates, which are the feldspars. Every single feldspar is an aluminum silicate. Some of them have other inclusions in them, which means what was it next to? A kidney, a lung, a heart, bile, that type of thing, stomach contents, whatever it was. But that's what caused all of these soft-bodied creatures, and I showed you the giant ones and everything else, and the silicon collecting in the cavities of lungs and so forth, where the plumbing came in. I've shown you the hearts and everything else. There's a heart, that's the aorta. Some blood's still left over in here. Blood is the red blood is trickly around. The black blood is a whole different story. It's a different molecular structure. It's a Fe2O2 is the black. Fe2O3 has extra oxygen is the red. Now, this is the key though. When these got into hot waters and soaked in all these acids and salts and everything for a long, long duration of time, the membranes allowed the transition metals, which always come in there anyway, that's where they're supposed to go. They allowed them in, but then they had no place to go. They weren't being sent back out through the veins. Veins clamp off. So they came in, and then that was it. Now, they stabilized or they got flushed out, one or the other. When they stabilized in magnificent stability in a really bloody area, you got opals. Where they stabilized in an area that had no transition metals and still a heart, you have what they call a water opal. They call this water glass. And all this is instead of the blood transition metals, like this heart I'll show you, it's filled up with just raw, clear silicates. All right, see, these are the transition metals. And these little pluses all over the place. That means they want to find something that will want some of these extra electrons or lack of electrons so they can add together and lock. So what does that mean? A certain tissue is going to have a certain chemical composition, and it's going to want blue, and it turns blue. Another one's going to want red or whatever it is, and it turns red. And that's what they are. They have to be in aqueous solutions. That's watery stuff. And these are ions, which means, I told you before, ions are the things that do all the different, really serious chemistry. Those are the different forms of the same thing, like silicon had all those different isotopes. Now, where are we now? Because I cover a lot of bases here, and you just have to. You can't cover just one. So we went through the colors to create the opals and all the different colored things. This is, well, let's start with the bacteria, because if you don't have bacteria, you don't have life. Bacteria is the foundation of all life, as far as I'm concerned. Bacteria, 100% foundation of life. And why do I say that? Well, this is what a bacteria is, and it's only a single cell. That's not like some big rocket ship thing going through. These are so tiny, they're unbelievable. They can squiggle through little tiny orifices, which are these channels and so forth in your body. And then there is one big fluid-filled highway they have just discovered that coats every organ in the body, and then there's little tubes that run between organs that send those things through the highway. And I have discovered them. They still haven't seen them yet. I am show you those in the microscope in a second, because I found the latch that latches all body parts together, and in that latch I found at least, well, I've seen 2 tubes. Well, I'll show you what they are in a minute. But getting back to this, every single bacteria, and there are literally probably hundreds of thousands, at least there's many, many, many tens of thousands. Now, they have a certain DNA inside of them. And what is the DNA inside of them? It's just like us. And what is it? Our DNA says you're a human being, you're going to do this, you're going to go out and work all day like a slave. Their DNA says, here's what I want you to do. Run around a body, and I want you to make these little balls called ribosomes. And those balls are going to be a chain of little particles just like this. Every one of those is going to be a nucleic acid. I'm sorry, an amino acid. And they're going to just squirt right out of the back of that bacteria. And here's what it looks like when it comes out. Alright. This is what happened. I showed you those ribosomes, those little balls. Let me make sure you don't miss something, because I tend to go a little quick sometimes. The balls are ribosomes. They will shoot out of here. And inside that ribosome is a ton of these little particles. And it's wrapped up in a ball, in a capsid, which is a sheath. Now, so that squirts out. Okay, you with me so far? It squirts out. And what does it do when it squirts out? Well, here's what it's made of first. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Here's what it's made of first. The ribosome is made of all these little particles here, and it collects inside of all of these like this in a big ball made out of all these different things. You see the polypeptide chains? They start to come in here, and they're programmed by this messenger RNA. It sends the program in and transcribes it. So this is the ball I talked about, the ribosome. Okay, you got it? See ribosome? That's the ball. And that was being made inside the bacteria. That's the ball. Okay, so you're with me so far? Bacteria is a little living thing, and they reproduce by themselves. And if you don't have those, you don't have that ribosome. You don't have that ribosome, you won't get the enzyme. And that's critical. I mean, I'm talking critical. So now there's the ribosome. What does the ribosome do? It squirts out the back of the bacteria. What happens then? It unfolds. They come out of there, blip, 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 and those are those ribosomes. The sheath unwraps, and out pops the enzyme protein. All right, an enzyme and a protein, same thing, no difference really. And a virus is the same thing as well. All it is a chemistry set. Now that chemistry set right there is so elegant that there's nothing can replace this. You can maybe get a little close, but you're not going to be just exactly right on the money. The body makes it so that it knows exactly what to do when it sees an invader. And here's this, when it unleashes itself, that's what it looks like. Imagine that? That's what one single enzyme looks like. And because that's what came out of that little ribosome. That's what it is right there. It pops out of the ribosome, and here it is. So when it comes out of the bacteria, it squirts out in these things. Remember this. Let me just, this should make it so anybody can understand. It's very simple to understand. These are the peptide chains. Polypeptide. They link to each other according to magnetism, according to these 20 different amino acids. Now they feed down into this, which is going to be a transcription RNA programmed by the messenger RNA. So it comes over, goes click, 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 and then this all sits inside this ball, all right, in a big long chain. Then when it shoots out of the bacteria and to be used, the sheath comes off, the enzyme goes like this, and that's it. From now on, it's going to be this way here, or if it doesn't, not exactly like this, it's not going to work. And what does exactly like this mean? It means exactly like something like this. All you got to do is change a couple of little particles in there, and you're done. It's not going to work anymore. It's that elegant. And you saw that big long chain? That's called a polypeptide. It means poly means a long. Then you have these little tiny peptide chains, which are not long. I think less than 50 maybe, or something like that. I forget what it is. There's a cutoff point of the number of particles in a row until it becomes a polypeptide. It just means a bigger. That's a polypeptide, I can tell you that. And that is a protein, and that is an enzyme or a virus or an antibody or anything you want to call it. It's chemistry in your body. And it's made by these things right here. And if you kill those things off, you're in trouble. So that's why I talk about fecal matter transplants, because that's where they come from, is somebody's guts. Somebody's good guts have good bacteria. People age. That's why they say, oh, if you're over 65, or now I think they're down to 50, if you're over such a certain age, you're susceptible to all these different things. Yeah, your bacteria is old and dying. Otherwise, and probably you had all kinds of antibiotics and who knows what they treated you with. That also kills them off. Plus, I think GMOs are programmed to not, so the plants can eat all kinds of toxins. They don't care about them, or they won't die, but they'll just grow nice and you eat them, and this is what happens. These are nothing more than plant life in you. Literally plant life. That's what it is. So if you got to detoxify your body with all these GMOs and all these, and I'm telling you, there are other things that I'm not going to mention, but there's things that invasive chemistry they're using into people's bodies, specifically antibiotics. I had surgery twice because of that, until somebody tipped me off. If you don't have the probiotics in your body, you're going to get sick, and you will eat right through your membranes. And that's what happens when they eat through your membranes. You get cancer, you get invasive, all kinds of stuff. Okay, once again, I just keep going off in all different directions, but it's all tied together. We've been talking about chemistry and how it's in the body and how you fight invasion, and this is what cancer looks like. And virtually all invasion breaks through this layer, which is the interstitial fluid-filled highway that contains all these enzymes. It breaks through, and then it starts feeding on your good bodily tissue below, and then it can grow like crazy. But when it's up in here, it really doesn't have a whole lot to feed on. Once it hits in here, that's when you're in trouble. And that's down here. Hold on. That's in this layer. Now again, I keep saying this is brand new research. Look at this. This is only from 2018. Meet your interstitium, a new found organ. And this is the biggest organ in the body, because all of this fluid-filled highway, which they never knew was here before, sends all of these bacteria and enzymes throughout the body. And they live in these little pockets here. That's where the bacteria and enzymes collect, and then they squirt out into the highway and go everywhere. Now, I found the organ that, and I believe it is another organ. Well, it attaches. I call it the spurlock, and it attaches a body part to another body part. And let me show you that, because you have to get that fluid-filled highway into every single body part. You can't completely separate it in one membrane. Membranes have to go into other membranes. That I missed in the beginning, and I don't think anybody knows about that. Although my friend in Germany, in the Fascia Institute over there in Germany, told me that they found tattoo byproducts way down deep inside the body where they just shouldn't be, and they, what could you draw from that? It got there somehow, and it had to be going through the fluid-filled highway, or it just somehow migrated to that. It had some affinity to be there, so that nobody really knew. But now we know I think for sure it's a fluid-filled highway. All right, check this out. This is the bone. And this is where the skin, or the tunica they call it, comes together and latches in the same spot. Basically the same thing. Those two spots right there are the latches. And there's also an artery looking thing right here too. But I believe those two are the same as the two that we see on this one down here. You see those two? Let me back this out of here. I'll come up higher and we'll look down at it. But I believe they're the same as those two right there. that are on the other one that I have here. You see it? Those come right down to here, right to the bottom, right down there, and that's what allows the fluids to come in, and the other one up there as well. Now, let's back it up a little further from that bone. Now, don't forget that's a bone. So I'm going to back it up, and then we'll look at it from up higher up so we can see those spots again. Okay, we're looking at it right there. Now, I want you to look up at the microscope shot. All right, let me back this out of here. Now, what are you looking at? Right here is where the latch comes across, and here's where the interstitial holes are. This is what feeds that into the next layer. Now, this is on the tunica of a bone, and it wraps around the bone. Let me put a little moisture on there. We'll come back to it in a second. Well, let me focus in. Well, anyway, this is the strap. This is the strap. You see it? And this is where the interstitial fluids run out. All right. I hope you can see what I'm talking about. It's right at the tip of this. See them right there? Those two holes right there, right in the middle. And that's coming right off the tip of this triangle, which wraps that bone. See, this is what I was showing you before, right in here, right there. That's where those holes are. And that's like this wraps around. I used to call it a crescent roll wrap. It comes right around and it seals right up there. Now, I don't know whether it's sealing on this whole region here or whether just the tip of the flap, but I know, well, I don't know for a fact anything, but I suspect those are the two holes that lead up into the wherever it has to continue the fluid-filled highway. Let's just go with that. And of course, that's the inside of the bone. There's only the tiniest little bone left in here. I try to show you in the microscope. And, you know, of course, this is where the ligament went between. There's another bone that rocked this way here. And I'm not sure. I think those are the nerves, or they might be the artery and vein. I'm not sure. And it's got all the it's everything. You see inside the cavity, it's got all those little indentations. That's how the ligaments lock in. So let's do some looking in the microscope, because I have another lung here, and that is right there is a spur lock on this one. You see the little tube looking things coming out of there? We'll look in the microscope and see if we can make any determination. But that is literally a whole entirely different type of material than the lung. I don't know what this lung was from, but that is the lock of the lung that locked it in place. And I showed you mine. This is a meteorite, came through space, and it is a lung, and it also has the spur lock on it. And there is bloody residue still in this lung, and it is magnetic. And that's what happens when they come through space. They get magnetized because all of the iron. Well, let me put it this way. Smelting means that you heat up and cook off all the other stuff than the iron. And then the iron becomes iron. And when it comes through space, it picks up magnetism as well. That just doesn't happen to regular rocks. They don't get magnetic. This is smelted lung. And I will show you the spur lock on this one. It's right there. All right, so let's do some scoping, all right, shall we? And don't forget, this is it right here. This is it right coming right off of this one here. These two little spots. Boom, boom. Now, something that I just really started to think about, I was thinking, you know, normally I see red and black because it's vein and artery. This is not the same situation. This is, I believe, could be the lymphatic tissue fluids, and they're basically all the same fluid, I guess. Again, another puzzle. Another puzzle. But I'm going to tell you what, they look the same to me, and never in the mud fossils will they be the same. One will be black and one will be empty, or it'll be red. Even coming through space. I show the stuff coming through. You want to see something? I talk about iron meteorite. I talk this about here, and I'm telling you right now, that's coming through space. There's blood in this, and I'll show you one that's completely melted down into iron, and they cut it, and you can see the vein and artery. You want to see it? Yes, of course you do. All right, this came through space. That is an iron meteorite, and nobody's going to question that. It's all scorched off. They cut it down right across, and then etched it with a little acids, I imagine. And this is what came to be seen. Now, what is this and what is that? Well, I have an iron meteorite here, but it has a ton of holes in it because it's a lung, and lungs have a lot of holes. As you can see, this is a lung too, and they're just saturated with holes. Now, that was probably a liver or possibly a heart. But what you're seeing right here is red blood, red blood. Do you see that? That's red blood. All right? Now, what is that doing there? There was actually plumbing coming into this. Now, the other one is here, which is black. Whoops, you can't see that, can you? Right there. That's why I always say the red and the black is the vein and artery in mud fossils, but it's in anything that, you know, those are the two different oxygenation states. Let's just go with that. The rest is all the blood chemistry, which is the metals in the blood. That's all it is. And then when you smelt off, some of them get stable. You see all the different colors and patterns and so forth. That's because they achieve different stability at different temperatures, and they sort of congeal together and they crystallize. That's what you're seeing here. But the vein and the artery is what I want you to see. And it's in all of them. Mine has the same thing. And again, I'm going to put this in. When I put this in water, it'll freak out. Because it's got the same latch and everything. Came through space, and that's a little one. So there's little ones, there's big ones. I showed you Comet 67P. That sucker's 10 times bigger than Raleigh, North Carolina. All right, remember this, and I say these two are the feeders for it. They're over there. We're looking at another lung, that little tiny lung right there, and there's the latch on this one. They all have that latch. You see that latch? And here it is up in the microscope. See it? And that looks like it has a couple of tubes coming down to me as well. You see those little two black spots right there? See it? Boom, boom. That's a new tubing system. I don't think it's ever been seen before. I got to get a hold of my autopsy guy and see if they know about this. All right, just think about this. What if you had internal rupturing and ripped that and broke that fluid-filled highway? I think that could be an issue. Wow. It doesn't get any clearer than that. That's right at the tip of that fascia flap. Look at that. I didn't realize how obvious it is. Look at that. All right, and I mean, you can see all the blood all over the place, everywhere. And that flap comes down and locks this body part in. Let's come over here. Whoops. Hold on a second. I'm attached. Let's come over here and look at this. What we are looking at right there. That is that little flap. And right at the tip of that flap is those little tiny dots. That's what we're just looking at. See? And that's all the fascia coating that wraps everything. And then the meat is underneath. And if it breaks through this layer into you, and starts feeding off of your good tissue down there, that's when you have a tumor that damages you. Now, can I show this iron meteorite to have one of those little flaps? I think I can. Let's get ready for that. I got a ton of stuff I could show you. I could go on this stuff all day long. And it's really interesting because you could find just over and over and over, find tons of things. All right, there is that lung for the iron lung, and there is the latch that they all have. And here it is right there. Okay, there it is. Now, I believe I see the two spots there too. You see them right at the tip? It's a different texture stuff that's out there, that edge, but this is all burnt off fascia. Now, you remember what the lung that has all the fabric on it? Let me just see if I can get rid of some of this shiny stuff here. You always have to really wet them to see, the detail. But then when you wet them, they get shiny sometimes. All right, so here it is. This is the flap. Now, can we see the detail at the end? It looks to me like it's probably these two. Let me put a little more water on there. It's kind of hard to tell precisely, but as far as I'm concerned, that's the latch. And wherever that latch is, there's going to be some blood attached wherever. Now, let's look at the fibers. Let's look at the fibers. All right, this is the area that's all cooked off. It burns off and just basically, it's just like a charcoal grill burns the steak on, if you really get it cooking, you get some nice black stuff. I love it that way myself. Now, underneath, though, inside the alveoli holes, you still have all of that red blood. Now, these little white fibers are the things that are in the fabric of all of the lungs and virtually all, life. Now, let me come right down and look at it close, and then I'll show you the other big lung. You see that? That's the one that came out of space. These are literally blood cells inside an alveoli, and over here is the fabric of the outer pleura of the lung. You can still see some of the fibers, and most of it's all cooked off. And you can actually see, I believe that's probably some gold. There's going to be transition metals in here all over the place because it's nothing but loaded with metals. All right, see, it's pretty well cooked off. I mean, obviously, it came through space. And, but if inside, look at that. It's just a spot where the blood is just sort of oozing out. It's pretty good and solid now, but trust me, there was a lot of blood in this thing when it started. And anyway, that's this little tiny lung. See the blood? That's just, there's no question, it's blood. And it's iron, and it's a meteorite, and it's a lung. As far as I can determine, all the meteorites are lungs and hearts and kidneys and all kinds of things. I have a fingertip over here from a giant. This is nothing more than a lung. That's a Willamette meteorite. And if they look right down at that spot right there, you can still see some blood in there. You can still see some blood in there if you really look real close. You see that red spot? You see that? That didn't just happen by accident. There's still ferrous oxides in it, just like there are inside of these. You see this, how red that is in there? It's all flushed off of here pretty much and turned into, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's the fabric infused with a little bit of red. But there's blood, just literally blood inside here. Just like there's literally going to be blood inside there. All right. This is not unusual. They're all over the place. Even one here, hold on. I got one from NASA. It's the exact same thing as this. That's this. You see the two holes up here? That's this. It's the same bonehead. It's literally identical. Even if you look at it carefully, all the little impressions up here on the edge where it locks it, this is identical to that bone. And this is supposed to be a meteorite from NASA, they say. See, meteorite. That's a NASA posted picture. That's this. All right, so they're all over the place. It's just what it is. It is what it is. Now, I think I made my case. I think I will leave it at that. Just remember, start looking at things a little bit differently. Take your time. Certainly there's no rush. It's been thousands of years. Okay, my friends, this is stunning to say the least. This was from experiments they did in 2015, the Russians in space, and they found the DNA. It looks to me like this is a double helix, and it appears that it's just formed by itself in space.